This is the Projekt Gemineye update, brought to you by Riffical Records. And here's your host, Mark Anthony K. Greetings, friends, and welcome to episode 123 of the Projekt Gemineye update. So, today I'm going to talk about a few things. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who has been watching the interviews that I have put up, that I've done recently. One of them was with the Look, It's Rock and Roll podcast with Mr. Julian Gill. That interview has done really well. I mean, it's approaching 150 views in just a couple of days, and that's excellent. That's way better than I thought it was going to do, actually. So I thank everybody who's watched it, and for those people who left their comments as well, I thank you very much for that. Also, I did a excellent interview with the Progressive Palaver guys. That's also up, and there's a link on the Projekt Gemineye Facebook groups for you guys to check that out as well. What next? Because again, I have my handy dandy list of things to talk about. Yes, I'd also like to give a big shout out and thank you to everybody who's been buying as of late off the Bandcamp site. I've had quite a big uptick in digital sales. There's been about 4 or 5 people who've bought the entire digital discography, which is fantastic, and leaving some pretty nice notes about enjoying the music, and that's just great to hear. So I really appreciate that. And there's also been some people who have been buying CDs. Recently, there's been a Brand New Day CD that's gone. There's been a Man of Science CD that's gone. Fantastic. I'm ecstatic that the back catalog is still moving, and there's new people coming to the table every week now, it seems. So that's really, really great. Also, a couple of the posters have sold out. So take a look on the site. I believe the limited edition one from the Man of Science, Man of Dreams pre-order is gone, and a couple of other things are gone. Give me 1 minute. I need a drink of water here. Sorry about that. Okay. Now, a quick reminder. November 1st is the beginning of the pre-order for In the Year 3073 Book 2. On November 6th, the album will be featured on the Check It Out podcast with Mr. DJ Peter Prog. That's November 6th on the progrock.com station. The next day, November 7th, the digital version of the album will be released on the Bandcamp site in full. So, some important dates to keep in mind. The artwork for the CD is coming along nicely, as is the artwork for the vinyl. So I'm very, very happy about that. Excuse me. Mr. Jason Pollan has been doing a great job with that again. So you're going to see some fantastic artwork and graphic stuff again. This week, or for this episode at least, I didn't get a chance to do my mixing an album or mixing a song series bit, which is going to be the keyboards, because honestly I've been so busy with interviews and with other things and working on Christmas record and so on and so forth. But the next update that's coming, and that one's going to be coming very soon, that one will have it as well as the next couple of ones. It's getting close to wrapping up that segment anyways, but next is going to be keyboards, then solo, and then I'm going to go over some of the vocal stuff, and then just an overview of the whole mix in general. So, what do we have now? Now coming up is a segment that I'm very much looking forward to having you guys check out, and that is my interview with the guest bass players segment. And this week, or this episode, we're going to have the fantastic David Donley with us. and he's going to talk about his thoughts on the album, his thoughts on the song, his thoughts in general. He's a great guy. He lives in England. He plays bass, he plays guitar, he plays drums, he plays everything, but he plays bass really damn good. And he appears on the song The Back Streets of Paradise, which is on the Book 2 album. And he did a stellar job on the bass guitar for that song. So enough of my babbling. Let's go over to David Donley now and listen to the interview we did with him. Greetings. So here we are today with our very good friend and fellow musician, Mr. David Donley. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, sir. I'm doing very well. It's raining here, but in merry old England, but I'm doing fine.
That's great. So before we get started, I've been asking everybody who I've been talking to lately, how are things in your neck of the woods? Over here in Canada, it's been getting a little crazy with the whole COVID thing. How are things in your area?
Well, it's funny actually. I took my first trip since lockdown to London, which is a train ride away, and that was quite strange because everyone's wearing a mask and they've got some like every second seat is like has a thing on it saying don't sit, and there's that weird thing. No one's looking at each other in the eyes, like it's almost you could get it by looking at someone. But it was a strange experience because I had to go on the tube as well. Once I'd finished the train journey, went on the tube, and ended up at somebody's house. It was a meeting about doing a film soundtrack actually, which was rather good. So that all went rather well. But it was very odd. It's still very odd, and apparently there are places like Liverpool's just been hit with a lockdown. There are certain places that are doing better than others. I'm very lucky because I live in a place called Norwich, which is in East Anglia. So if you look at the map of Britain, it's kind of like the arse bit, and we're in the middle of that. But it means it's not a place that people drive through. If you come to Norwich, it's because you're going to Norwich.
Yeah,
it's not. It's a bit out on the east, so it's like you would be. It's not like sort of Birmingham had a big spike of COVID because so many people drive through it. London, obviously, and any major city. And although Norwich is pretty much a well-known city, like I say, you do have to visit it. But personally, I'm just keeping myself to myself and the very small group of people that I know are okay. And I visit my pretty elderly mother as well, so I want to keep things okay. But certainly it's been a very, very strange time for self-employed musicians.
Yeah, you're telling me.
It's been difficult,
Yeah. So I mean, with you saying that there, I mean, I just finished talking to Joe Bailey, and he's in Cotswold, and he said that his area got hammered down, like they're in lockdown again, his area.
Yeah.
So he's not too pleased about that, but things happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for people who are familiar with my music, are very familiar with you now because you have been on the last record that I did.
Yeah.
You played bass on it, and you've also been on the cover songs that I did for the bonus tracks as well.
Yeah.
And my first question is, I first sent you the first song that you did, which was Children of Hope. Sorry. See, you know the song better than I do.
Your own songs.
Yeah, exactly. Children of Hope. And I remember you said your reaction to it was that you were kind of surprised that I gave you that type of song, a bit more of a kind of almost a ballady kind of song to do. This time around, I gave you anything but a ballad to do.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what your reaction was when you first heard the song I gave you.
I was a bit nervous because it was a bit like some of your listeners might know that I have this sort of Bowie connection with the Erdl Kizzle Band or Holy Holy and that sort of thing. And some of those songs were more complicated than I thought, but and I had that similar feeling where I listened to, I was thinking, oh, okay, because you said, oh, don't worry, it's not, not that I was worried, but it's not a ballad. You said it's definitely, more like you'd expect. And I just thought, oh my God, it's Frank Zappa. It's it had that sort of brilliant fit. I loved it, but it was one of those sort of right, okie dokie. And I took a lot longer to do it, as you well know, because you were waiting for it. But I just wanted to get it right. I wanted to get it right, and I don't really like dropping in and dropping out and doing sort of cheesy overdub sort of thing. I like to stand up with the bass around my neck, some decent lighting in the studio, play the track, and if I can get through, I'd rather do a couple of repairs than sort of do it section by section. Or I know people who've done line by line. And so it was really difficult because it is a bit like the Bowie song "Width of a Circle." That's an absolute killer. And even changes, it was difficult for me because I was trying to do Erdl's bass line, and so I was really pleased though, because I love it. I mean, I like Children of Hope as well, but it was just a surprise because I've got all the previous 3 Projekt Gemineye albums and I've enjoyed them all. And I think is that the closest you've come to a sort of all out kind of ballad with kind of things? I'm trying to,
Yeah.
And so for me to be asked as well, considering that that my background is playing with members of the Sex Pistols, or the sort of my roots are punk rock, for instance, and stuff. So it was really sort of, oh, okay, alrighty ho. And but it was great. I love it when you test me, Mark. I played with my fingers as well, which rather than a plectrum. I didn't mean I'd normally play with my feet, but but I did the whole sort of playing with my fingers thing, and that was a different thing. It was a different thing. It's really nice. It's like, again, going back to the Bowie thing, it's like doing Ashes to Ashes, for instance, with Erdl's band and stuff. I'd never really done slap bass before, and if you listen to the bass line in Ashes to Ashes, it's basically sort of like a slap and pull bass line. So I like the way you were testing me. It was good.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I actually gave you that, is because I know, knowing full well your background, I was thinking to myself, what would he do if I gave him a sort of ballad song? It might be completely like different and stuff. So I was pleased with the result. That's why I gave it to you. But I figured this time, I'll give you something that had a little bit more meat to it. And one of the things I really enjoyed that you did with this track was that you gave me a track of dirty stuff for the choruses and for the beginning. And then when the verses came in, you gave me this more kind of thinner, almost DI-ish kind of tone, as opposed to the other one that fit so good with the guitars that I did in the verses. I mean, it was actually a pleasure, and probably, and I'll be honest with you, one of the more easier songs for me to mix because of that with the bass. It turned out really good, and I'm going to be sending you a copy of the song after we're done here, so you can hear exactly
the finished result.
Because I have it mixed. It's not mastered yet, but I have a finished mix for it. I'm going to send to you and let you hear it, because it turned out really, really good. It's probably one of the more like melodic and moody songs on the record. I think you'll really like it when you hear the finished stuff on there. And I was wondering, of course, being a producer kind of guy as well, like you and stuff like that, did you go in with any kind of special idea of how to approach it? Did you like take anything specific? Did you use a specific bass for one part, or did you just use the same one and just do different tones? How did you approach it?
Well, it was because I felt it had quite a lot of ebb and flow in it. So I thought, well, maybe let's try some different sounds, But I did still use my white Ibanez, which I thought I used for Holy Holy and all that sort of stuff. And I have 3 basses, but for some reason that one's got just the right amount of growl and roundness as well. And I think sometimes when you find a bass you like, that just you can fit well. But it's like I used the Ampeg gain stuff that I've got on my setting as well to give it that sort of almost Peter Hook from Georgia Vision type sort of growl and distortion sort of thing, and but I just think the sound of that Ibanez white bass when it's completely plain, sound engineers have said that it's a really good bass to be able to sort of mess about with when they're doing front of house stuff. Whereas, if you've got a Rickenbacker, it sounds like a Rickenbacker. If you've got a Fender P bass, it's you can sort of kind of hear that's what it is. Whereas the Ibanez it has sort of 3 pickup settings, so you can mess about with it quite a lot. But because the song kind of was a bit of a roller coaster of a song, I thought it'd be quite good to, to give you a choice of different sounds, and see what you could do with them.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I listened back to the performance of it, your bass playing is very interesting because there are moments in it when you listen to it where I can clearly, distinctly hear that you're trying to play with the drums, lock in with that
Mm.
section, and there's other times in there where I kind of distinctly hear where you're trying to move away from the drums a bit and maybe focus a little bit more on the guitar, which I think is a very interesting approach to it because sometimes bass players I know either do one or the other, and I like the fact that you kind of combine it a bit more because I know, like for example, in that one breakdown part, which I think you called the Frank Zappa part, where
Yeah,
that all those notes are, I think some bass players would have maybe took the approach to maybe just do a more simplistic, line with less notes, but you actually went in and almost did a note for note exactly to what
yeah,
I did,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which I thought was fantastic because I wasn't expecting it, but that I got it was great. So I mean, I'm guessing, was that a bit of a challenge, or was that just a matter of just figuring out what it was and it was pretty simple from there?
Well, it was both. That was the challenge, figuring out what it was. And I think I actually even sent you an email, didn't I, or something, and just said, that bit does it go to D or does it go to, because I just couldn't quite work it out. But yeah, it was really just a case of what fits best. You've always got to play for the song. That's the thing. But I think I'm extremely lucky. I don't think it has anything to do with talent. But when I was a little kid, I was a drummer first, and then when punk happened, I wanted to play guitar. And then obviously if you can play, if when you get to a certain stage with guitar, you can pick up a bass and do the root notes and stuff. So I started doing all my own demos, playing drums, and I'd have the lyrics on a music stand and I'd be singing along with it in my head, playing the drums, and then I'd go put my sticks down, pick up the bass and do that. But I think what that's taught me is that because I always do listen to the drums, the guitars, the vocals, all that sort of stuff, as it does, I think if you've got one instrument that is just your instrument, and nothing else, then I think it might be. I don't know, because mine, I play all three of the sort of main ones, if you like. But
Yeah.
I imagine that if you're just a guitarist, sometimes I have seen people in bands just kind of float off into their own world, as it were. Whereas I always want to listen to what everyone else is doing and how can I jigsaw piece myself into that sort of thing. And I tried several things for that midsection that you were talking about, and it just made me think that when you mix it, it'll be a really good headphone listen if the bass is doing the same as the guitar, and then comes out of it. We won't give too much away, but when it comes out of it, I think they separate quite wildly, after being locked in together, sort of thing. But yeah, I was just amazed that you really liked it, because I know that you know. And I do too, but that's what I like about Projekt Gemineye, is it is, to me, it's not, you're not in the same, I don't want to upset you, but you're not in the same wheelhouse as Genesis and all that sort of stuff. For me, it's more Porcupine Tree and even Muse, or those sort of modern, maybe because you're younger, and so you've got that little bit of rock edge, that because you like not bog standard, you like rock music as well.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah, of
just,
course.
you're not sort of into just into music that needs a sort of maths degree to understand it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up with a lot of that more kind of simpler stuff, and because of my sister, I was introduced to a lot of other stuff and a lot of British stuff really early on, and not
Yeah.
just prog. I mean, like popish stuff like Duran Duran and
Mm,
Japan and stuff like that were huge in my house
yeah.
because of my sister. So I was all familiar with that synthesizer stuff, you know, early on, and it was something that I kind of embraced, I think, early on, that these things were not, a bad thing, because you always had that kind of element of musicians that are kind of like synthesizers and rock, man, they don't like that idea, like just keep it guitars and bass and drums. But
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of limiting. You know what I mean? You can only do so much with guitars and bass and drums. If when you add a bit of a keyboard in there, sometimes you can do a lot of things, because a keyboard can mimic a guitar pretty easy. Sometimes you just get a little bit of distortion on a sound. They're like a Moog
Yeah.
lead sound, and then bam, you're harmonizing a guitar player, right?
Yeah. But the funny thing is about that is that I think because they came along, those bands, Duran Duran, well, just to take those two that you said,
Yeah.
Duran Duran and Japan, I think because they came along at the time of that sort of the 80s kind of new romantic thing and what have you. Everyone's looking at the singer, everyone's looking at David Sylvian, and everyone's taking Duran Duran as, you know, these pretty boys that are doing pop music and stuff, which they were. But when you go back and listen to, say, the first Duran Duran album or Japan's early stuff and all the way through, I mean, you know, because I know that you like this band, but Steve Jansen, what a drummer that guy is. And Steve Jansen's done stuff with No Man, who I was involved a little bit with when I worked at Burning Shed. And but he's an incredible drummer. I mean, technically a phenomenal drummer. John Taylor as a bass player, absolutely incredible when you listen to him and stuff. Mick Kahn, you know, a fretless bass player all the way through. So I think those bands in hindsight have kind of been given their due a bit more than they did from so-called serious musicians back in the day, because there's just a bit too much eyeliner and lipstick knocking about, you know. And and that does, you know, it shouldn't make any difference, but, you know, as you know, there's loads of bands that, because if they've got a really strong image, people can sometimes just kind of look past how good they are, you know. But they were really good, and Richard Barbieri ended up in Porcupine Tree, you know, Japan's keyboard player, and so they were all pretty accomplished, Duran Duran and Japan I had a lot of time for, because I was never really, even though I said I come from the punk thing, I never wore safety pins or dyed my hair or anything. I just liked the sheer wall of noise that was coming at me. And as someone who was told he was a drummer, I suddenly thought, well, maybe I could play guitar, because that's just going, you know, I could maybe do that. And so that was the kickoff point, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, it all totally makes sense to me, like I said, because of my involvement in it as well, like listening to it and stuff. I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So what I think is also pretty important here to talk about is that your involvement with the cover songs I did before on the other songs. I thought that those are really, really well played. I mean, one of the things that really impressed me, and I'm hoping that the people who are watching this have probably heard some of these songs, but I was thoroughly floored with your rendition of Wrathchild, because to me, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that was almost perfect to Steve Harris's way of doing it. And I thought to myself, because when I tried to play it by myself, because I did a rough demo of it, right? Just to you know, map it out, right? And my bass playing was nowhere near how it was, because you had a way of doing the way he does his pickup notes, where I just do it a little too
right.
I don't have the same kind of feel to it like you do, which you can tell is why you're probably a more experienced bass player than I am, right? But I have to say, like, for anybody who hasn't heard those cover songs, I highly suggest to listen to it, because he did a great job on Wrathchild. I think the performance on 5 Years that you did too was really good, really, really good.
Well, I had a bit of practice on that one because of
having played it, right? Yeah. So and the funny
Z behind me, you know, that helps. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And the other one that I thought that was really great was when we did the Hammer to Fall, because one of the things that I did, and I'm sure you must have realized it being a experienced Queen listener as well, is that I opted not to do the album version. I did the single version of it, which had the cut down solo part in there. And I did that mainly because I remember seeing them do that song on Live Aid. And when they played it on Live Aid, they played that version of it, right? So that version had always stuck on me. And I remember when I heard the Queen Greatest Hits, or maybe it was Best Of or whatever, when I heard that song the first time with the full version, I was like, what is this? Like, it totally was alien to me. Right? Because I was so used to that version. That's why I did it that way. So, so I got to say, your bass playing on this is fantastic. Again, thank you so much for doing this song for me on this record.
You're more than welcome.
Now, before we go though, I want to ask you about a couple of other things now, because obviously you're a very seasoned musician. You've been around and did a lot of different things. So what's David Donley doing now in the background?
Well, obviously it's a bit difficult right now. I was supposed to be doing a couple of festivals with a band called Visage, who had a big hit in England 40 years ago called Fade to Grey. Some people might know that, but they did do like 3 albums as well. And Rusty Egan, who was the drummer in the Skids and the Rich Kids before forming Visage, we've been working on various bits and pieces, but it's so difficult at the moment to do this. My other band, Choose Your Weapon, which is myself and these 2 ladies, and we were about to set our first single going. The idea was to do it in February, and then then I think we skipped for some reason, and then by March we weren't able to do that. But we have now we've done a sort of lockdown video, if you like, all 3 of us doing our own little bits in our place, and I'm really, really pleased with that. And when that does come out, your fans will, or your listeners or viewers or whatever, will see that you had a little hand in some of that. Yes. But I'm really excited with how that sounds. There's another project called Wise, which is a lady called Denise Wise, who sort of approached me with some lyrics and said, could we do something with these? And that's been brilliant as well. I've really enjoyed doing that. And like I say, I've just come back from London this weekend about a film soundtrack job, but unfortunately I can't say anything about it. Yeah. So I'm just going to have to sit on that one, I'm afraid. But yeah, it's been nice to get back in. I don't know about you, but the COVID thing really took my eye off the ball, and for ages I didn't turn the studio on. I got a bit down about it, to be honest, and I'm sure a lot of people have. I mean, I had 4 people I know have people like a parent die and stuff like that. It was pretty heavy for a while, and but there was that moment where I just thought, I think it was when Denise Wise got hold of me and said, "Would you help me with this?" And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do something, and then it just kind of kick-started wanting to go back in the studio and get going. So there are projects afoot, as it were. But as for, I don't know. I mean, the Visage stuff is scheduled. I don't know what you're saying, Canada. Scheduled or scheduled?
Scheduled.
It's scheduled for next year, and I hope so. I really hope so, because obviously it'd be nice to play to 15,000 people again or something. Yeah. It would be good. But I daren't get too excited. You're probably the same. I mean, you're lucky in a way that you've got this. It's a bit. Choose Your Weapon have played live. There is a clip on video on YouTube of us at the Mill Theatre, but it was just the once, and we were hoping to sort of play live once the single came out and do an EP and stuff, and all that's just on the back burner at the moment. And my old buddy Glenn Matlock, he did one of the first sort of socially distant gigs a few weeks back with his Glenn Matlock and the Tough Cookies band, and but it was a weird thing looking at the pictures of it and stuff. And I spoke to Jim, the bass player, about it, and he said it was odd. It's like, because everyone was kind of fenced off in these little sections. I really hope that's not the way we're going to have to do live work, and I can't imagine how financially viable it was as well. The great thing about Glenn is that he does things because he wants to do them, and I don't think he particularly worries about how much it'll cost or how much he's going to make. I'm not talking for him, but he's always struck me as a very genuine and generous musician. So maybe that was just him wanting to just have a bit of a bash,
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that too many bands will be able to do that sort of thing and carry on making a living.
Well, I think that people are starting to maybe try to let themselves be a little bit optimistic, because just the other day on Facebook, I saw that they've announced the lineup for, or at least partially the lineup for the Cruise to the Edge cruise for 2022. Right. 2021, 2022. Right. So they're being very safe with it, because they're announcing bands like Marillion and Fish and all these other people on there, to be on this. So it's a big cruise again. And, cruises right now are a very sticky thing to be involved with. So, I think that people...
They're going to have Fish and Marillion on the same boat.
Well, I'm pretty sure I saw that. I could be incorrect, but, from what I've read, because I just read, I have a really big magazine that Prague magazine came out with, that has the whole history of Marillion in there. Yeah. And they were just saying too that nowadays that they're actually on good talking terms again, those guys. So
Oh, that's cool. That's
it's
cool.
not a fisticuffs moment anymore with them, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's
so it's good. I mean, and let's hope that when the next year starts, that we can start looking forward to some more positive things to have done with both of us. So
yeah. I mean, I hope
one,
I hope this film soundtrack thing comes along because I've done a couple of things like that, and I was thinking to myself, well, maybe that's the way I have to go, is because obviously I can do that in my own studio upstairs, and and I don't have to be with anyone,
yeah,
as it were. It's just yeah, and so I just thought, well, gosh, maybe that's the way to go. But I do kind of miss getting hot and sweaty and a bit nervous with everybody, and and just that buzz that you get from walking out there and looking down at the first couple of rows and what have you, enjoying themselves.
yeah. Well, let me just say this: Trevor Rabin has made a career the last 20 years of making movie soundtracks, and he ain't complaining. The guy has like a $9 million home in Los Angeles
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
it. So
yeah.
if you get on the right movie soundtrack, I'm sure you won't be complaining about not being around a few sweaty people. And
No,
plus, when you're in that situation too, you can just always stop and
yeah,
go and play shows because you can always go back to your studio and do more soundtracks afterwards,
absolutely,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but yeah, so we better leave it at this though. I think we have more than enough for my little video that I need to do, and
Excellent.
so we will leave it at this. Thank you once again, David, for coming on, talking to me about doing this and the stuff that you're going to be doing. And for all you people out there watching, thank you for watching. And I will be back again soon with much more stuff to talk about. So until then, on behalf of myself and on behalf of David Donley, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.
Cheers.
And we're back. So I think you'll agree that was a very good interview with Mr. David Donley. Lots of things were talked about, lots of things were said. So once again, a quick reminder, November 1st, we are having the pre-order of the CD version of the album starting on that day. November 6th, we have the Album of the Day segment on the Check It Out podcast with DJ Peter Prog on the progrock.com station. Of course, I'll probably be, showing you all the information on that. And November 7th, the digital release of the album comes out on the Bandcamp site. Now, one quick thing here, just to end this segment. What was I going to say now? Oh, yeah. I was going to say that the next episode, we're going to have Mr. Lee Pomeroy join us for the bass player guest segment. And the last one, of course, is going to be Mr. Billy Shearwood. That's going to be appearing as well. So make sure you tune in for those ones. Again, apologies for not putting up the keyboard segment this episode. It will be on the next one for sure. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about. People have been asking how long, basically, the timeline from pre-order to receiving the CDs. The last time, it didn't take very long, a couple of weeks actually, for it to get all done and, packed and stuff like that. I don't know for sure because as we're drawing near to Christmas, that may change, but I've been told that it's not that big a wait for the CD versions. So that could be very good news. And so make sure you get in on your pre-order. There's going to be some extra stuff available as always, and I'm looking forward to that. And so let's make it another fantastic pre-order. Don't forget this album, honestly, I'm very happy with it. It turned out excellent. The guest bass players did an amazing job. And, not only are you going to have me and my music on here, you had Joe Bailey, you have David Donley, you have Lee Pomeroy, and you have Billy Shearwood. I mean, come on. That's like, those guys are prog royalty, come on. So, in any case, let's just leave it at that. And I hope you guys are all doing well. Keep safe out there. Wear your masks. Wash your hands. Let's get through this stupid pandemic finally so we can get back to concerts and all those other fun things that we've been missing out this year. So let's leave it at that. I will talk to you all very soon and have a great day. Bye for now.